Is using high-tech tools to review new evidence linked to the Hillary Clinton email controversy. Hello, everybody. I'm Jenna Lee.
And I'm John Scott. The FBI sifting through 650,000 emails found on a laptop belonging to Clinton top aide Huma Abedin, using a special program to weed out copies of messages they've already seen from new emails. The program also lets forensic computer analysts, I should say, check for any emails containing classified information. This as the Bureau and its director face intense pressure from both Democrats and Republicans to complete this review by Election Day. That is, of course, 1 week from today. We have live Team Fox coverage. Rich Edson is following the Clinton campaign in Dade City, Florida, but we start with Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge in Washington. What's the latest, Catherine?
Well, John, FBI forensic computer experts have developed a software program with key search terms, what analysts call taglines, and the process of sifting through thousands of records on Anthony Weiner's computer has begun. The warrant will now allow FBI investigators to move beyond the metadata on Weiner's computer, which had positive hits for State Department as well as Clinton server records, to search the contents of those messages. A law enforcement source familiar with the process said once the records are identified, a second phase will kick in known as eyes on. That's an FBI phrase for physically reading and reviewing the records. Just like the original classification review in the Clinton email case, the intelligence agencies that generated the information have final say on classification. An attorney for Huma Abedin, Weiner's estranged wife, says she's surprised to learn that her emails were on the computer. A statement from that lawyer reads in part, quote, "From the beginning, Ms. Abedin has fully complied and voluntarily with State Department and law enforcement requests, including sitting for hours-long interviews and providing her work-related and potentially work-related documents." The Justice Department sent this letter to Capitol Hill late yesterday, pledging to make every resource available to expedite the process. Meantime, it does seem with the sheer number of records that it's unlikely to be completed before Election Day. The White House is at least publicly taking a neutral position.
The president doesn't believe that Director Comey is intentionally trying to influence the outcome of an election. The president doesn't believe that he's secretly strategizing to benefit one candidate or one political party.
An intelligence source tells Fox News that the multi-agency task force that was used in the original email case has been re-engaged over the weekend with the directive to identify classified material. Analysts are working overlapping shifts covering 16 hours each day, and the directive was to get as much information as possible to the director, what they call more clarity or fidelity on the records by Monday if he faced, even more pressure from Congress, the candidates, and the White House, John.
So despite the fact that many Democrat political leaders are crying foul over this Comey investigation, the top Democrat, the president, says he doesn't see any, thumb on the scale here from the director.
Well, it was sort of, I don't know, a slightly schizophrenic news conference, if I can use that term, because Josh Earnest tried to at least publicly say, and did say, that they're very neutral on the issue, but on the other side, when he had additional questions, he said that it was highly unusual for the director to take the decision that he had and to make this information public so close to an election. But certainly the White House did not ram the director, for lack of a better term, as Democrats have in this case.
Schizophrenic, that's a good term for it. Catherine Herridge.
Maybe not the right one, but it's the one I had.
All right. Thanks, Catherine.
Okay. You're welcome.
Doing our best with the play-by-play as the news changes. In the meantime, Huma Abedin is missing from the campaign trail as Hillary Clinton holds 3 events today in the key battleground state of Florida, where the race is very, very close, as you know. The Clinton campaign still dealing with the fallout over the latest email revelations, and our Rich Edson is live in Dade City, Florida, about 40 miles from Tampa, with more. Rich?
Hey, good morning, Jenna. And the Clinton campaign has launched its own campaign of sorts, that to discredit FBI Director James Comey, especially after that investigation announcement. She has left that, Clinton, up to her campaign staff and Democratic allies, particularly congressional Democrats. Clinton herself has avoided any discussion on the campaign trail about her emails or any investigation into them, though lately she is acknowledging this latest round and saying that she's dismissing all concerns about this latest investigation.
Now they apparently want to look at emails of one of my staffers, and by all means, they should look at them. And I am sure they will reach the same conclusion they did when they looked at my emails for the last year. There is no case here.
And by just one of her staffers, she's talking about her closest or one of her closest aides, Huma Abedin. Her computer, the one she shared with her estranged husband, Anthony Weiner's, the one the FBI is scouring. Abedin has made no public statement, yet her attorney has made a statement. In it, she says, quote, she only learned for the first time on Friday from press reports of the possibility that a laptop belonging to Mr. Weiner could contain emails of hers. While the FBI has not contacted us about this, Ms. Abedin will continue to be, as she always has been, forthcoming and cooperative. Meanwhile, the Clinton campaign continues attacking Donald Trump, saying that he's erratic and unfit to control America's arsenal, particularly the nuclear arsenal. Later today, a campaign official says this event here in Dade City, Florida, former Miss Universe Alicia Machado will introduce Hillary Clinton at this event. Remember, it was Hillary Clinton who brought Ms. Machado into the national discussion as someone who Donald Trump had spoken harshly to say it in a certain way. A Clinton campaign aide says that this event will serve as a way to demonstrate that Donald Trump is unfit to be president, also when it pertains to women and girls. Back to you.
Rich, thank you.
So new numbers out this morning in the race for the White House, giving Donald Trump the edge. An ABC News Washington Post poll finds Trump ahead of Hillary Clinton, 46 to 45%. That is, of course, well within the margin of error. Essentially, it puts them at a tie. Joining us now, Colleen McCain-Nelson, White House correspondent at the Wall Street Journal, and Chris Deaton, deputy online editor at the Weekly Standard. So when you look at these numbers, Colleen, it's the first time that Donald Trump has led in this particular poll since May. What does it say to you?
Well, as you delve into them, probably the most interesting number is looking at supporters of each candidate who are very enthusiastic. And the bad news for Hillary Clinton is that number is on the decline. And this tracking poll saw the number of people who say they're very enthusiastic about voting for Hillary Clinton fall 7 points just over the weekend after this news broke. And so that's treacherous territory for Hillary Clinton as she tries to get her supporters to go to the polls. And if they are less enthused about that, she clearly has more work to do. She's trying to use this as a rallying point and can use this to motivate her voters, energize her voters. I was with her in Florida over the weekend, and her most loyal supporters who turn up to her events say this won't change their minds, but it could change the minds of people who are a little less certain about Hillary Clinton.
So what do you make, Chris, of this enthusiasm gap? If it's down 7 points, does that mean a bunch of Hillary Clinton supporters decide to sit this one out or you know, not trek through the snow to get there on Election Day?
Hopefully the snow isn't too bad in the upper Midwest for all voters included. I just got back from there a few days ago, and it seemed to be pretty temperate up there so far. But it could be one of those issues because that's what it always turns down to in the last few days of an election like this, right? We see it tighten up a little bit. You want to turn out your base. You want to make sure that you have those core supporters get out there and just try to outgun the other guys a little bit if it's going to be fought on the margins. I think one of the things that we see as elections like this one tighten up when you have two candidates for whom the public has had a great amount of distaste the entire time. For it to go up for Clinton at this point, that's going to make it even tighter down the stretch. And we're obviously seeing that reflected in some of the polls here.
That's the point, Colleen. I mean, this is a race where both of these candidates come into it with very high negatives. And a lot of people, especially the undecided, are going to walk into that voting booth and have to make a choice one way or the other. So these latest revelations about Hillary Clinton, that damages her prospects, doesn't it, among the truly undecided?
That's right. I mean, this obviously reinforces existing concerns about Hillary Clinton. This goes to whether she's trustworthy, whether she's too secretive, whether she is willing to play by the rules. And so this has been the dominant storyline over the last few days, overshadowing any number of other stories that we might have been focused on about Donald Trump. And so Hillary Clinton, in addition to trying to use this to rally her supporters and say this is patently unfair, she's also trying to change the subject and remind voters about her concerns about Donald Trump. And so we see Miss Universe, the former Miss Universe, introducing Hillary Clinton today. She's on the trail talking about how thin-skinned she believes Donald Trump is, that he shouldn't be trusted with the nuclear codes. And so as this storyline kind of reinforces concerns about her, she's on the trail trying to turn voters' attention back to why Donald Trump doesn't have the temperament she believes to be president.
So, Chris, what about that? I mean, can Hillary Clinton use this to say, you know, look, they are attacking me. They're going after me. You've got to get out there and vote for me.
That is almost flipping a derivative of this election is rigged script in her direction there at this point. It's fascinating how those things can kind of change very quickly. But that absolutely can happen. That's the type of thing that you turn out your core supporters when you say, look, all of a sudden the narrative's running against me. They're trying to keep you at home. They're trying to dissuade you. I need you to get out and vote for me. And obviously, to piggyback off of Colleen's point, Donald Trump is doing the same thing. He's been out there on the campaign trail the last few days, really, beating this story into the dirt as he has with a lot of this stuff so far. I think the big thing that we're going to have to keep an eye on is what Catherine said a few minutes ago, the fact that we're probably not going to have any substantive information about what is actually contained in these emails by Election Day. What new information are we going to learn that actually might drive some of those voters on the margins to support one candidate one way or the other?
What a race. Chris Deaton, Weekly Standard. Colleen McCain-Nelson, Wall Street Journal. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Keep it right here on Fox News Channel on Election Day for live coverage and expert analysis all day as voters across the country head to the polls to pick our next president of the United States.
Well, Donald Trump sharply criticizing Hillary Clinton, calling her unfit, unqualified to serve as president. Coming up, we're going to talk to one of Mr. Trump's advisors about the latest email revelations, how that might be impacting their strategy for the last week. We want to hear from you as well. Do you think the FBI investigation of Clinton's emails will impact the presidential and down-ballot elections 1 week from today? Our live chat is up and running. Just go to foxnews.com/happening now to join the conversation. Clinton, days after the FBI announced, is looking into newly discovered emails. It comes as new polls show that the race is tightening.
Hillary is the one who broke the law over and over and over again. We can be sure that what is in those emails is absolutely devastating. She's unfit and unqualified to be the president of the United States, and her election would mire our government and our country in a constitutional crisis that we cannot afford. If Hillary is elected, she would be under protracted criminal investigation and probably a criminal trial, I will say. So we'd have a criminal trial for a sitting president.
Joining me now, Jason Miller, Senior Communications Advisor for Donald Trump campaign. We'll talk about the messaging. The messaging has changed with the latest news. Jason, we hear that from Donald Trump in his speeches that we've been taking live on Fox News. How has the news impacted your strategy overall?
Well, it's impacted in a big way in a sense that everybody now is talking about Obamacare. Mr. Trump has been talking about the need to repeal and replace Obamacare for months on the campaign trail, actually going back to when he kicked off. But last week, when we got the news of the premium spiking in such a big way, 25% nationally, and where Mr. Trump is today in Pennsylvania, upwards of 60%. Now everybody's talking it, not just about.
So you're not talking about the FBI investigation at all. You're talking about health care right now. Do you see that resonating more with voters and undecided voters than the news of the FBI investigation?
Absolutely, because whether or not you pay attention to politics or the mess in Washington, I think a lot of voters are quite frankly turned off by what they see in Washington. Everybody cares about their health insurance. Everybody cares about how much money they have in their bank account and in their pocketbooks every single month. And so when families are getting these letters in the mail, in fact, I had a friend from South Carolina text me a copy of his letter that he and his family received yesterday. And their family premium went from about $915 a month to almost $1,200 a month. It is about a 27% increase. That's food off the table, and that's a big difference. And so this is the big news, and it's why Mr. Trump is talking about this in Philadelphia today.
Is there a hesitancy by the campaign when you're advising him on his message not to go too far on the FBI investigation news and focus more on these policy issues? And why would that be?
Well, I'd say just the opposite from the fact that Mr. Trump is fundamentally trying to change Washington. I think most people at home watching are sick and tired of the promises that were given every 4 years. Nothing ever changes. Things just continue to get worse, especially over the past 8 years. And so that's why Mr. Trump laid out this very aggressive ethics reform plan, including term limits and bans on members of Congress and people leaving administrations being able to come back and lobby. And when we see this news, when we saw last week the news of the Clinton Inc., the $66 million essentially to how to turn the Secretary of State's office into a pay-to-play operation working the Clinton Foundation. That got people really mad. And then we had the big bombshell on Friday with the FBI investigation.
But it seems that you're drawing it back to policy. You mentioned South Carolina. South Carolina is a solidly red state. Where are you seeing opportunity to take your message, and what does that look like? Is it investment in advertising? Is it getting Mr. Trump on the ground to more of these states? And where is that opportunity?
So Mr. Trump is doing very well in the key battleground states, Florida, North Carolina, Ohio, even Iowa, which has been blue the last couple of election cycles, where we're leading. We feel confident we're going to win. But just today we announced an increased advertising buy where we're going on offense into what are viewed as traditionally blue states like Michigan and New Mexico. We show those races as being dead heats, and this is, I think, because of Mr. Trump's message, where we're now on offense, and that's the difference. You see the Clinton campaign is going up on TV in Colorado, where previously they'd taken their ads down and said it was safe. They're now going back up on TV in a sign of weakness, and they're back up on TV in Wisconsin, another blue state where clearly they're not doing as well as they're projecting.
Based on the polls, their attacks in previous weeks against Donald Trump seem to have been effective. We saw the race looked different a couple weeks ago than it does today with the tightening of the polls. And we saw some of the attack lines reemerging yet again. Rich Edson just reported to us that the former Miss Universe, that it claims that Mr. Trump mistreated her, is going to be heading an event for Hillary Clinton in Florida. And then the campaign manager on Good Morning America for Hillary Clinton had this to say about your candidate. Let's go ahead and play that sound.
This is unprecedented. For 40 years, people have gone to the polls having seen the candidates' tax returns. Early voting has already started. This is the first time in decades. And what's particularly astounding about this recent report is that Donald Trump was writing off other people's losses. So not only did he not pay taxes for 20 years, he was writing off other people's losses. Some of the loopholes he was using are now against the law.
Taxes, legally dubious business practices. What's your response to that?
I think that what we're seeing is a sad and desperate effort by the Clinton campaign to try to change the subject from a criminal investigation into the illegal secret server they had set up to try to get around the government structure to make sure confidential and classified information are kept that way. You have two very different campaigns right now. You have a campaign with Mr. Trump, who's talking about here's a specific consumer benefit that I'm going to bring to voters. So not just someone to vote for, but something to vote for. Presenting a positive vision, including he had his, he just launched his urban renewal plan, where he's talking about how he's going to improve African American communities. He was talking about that in Michigan yesterday. But then on the other hand, you have the Clinton campaign, which is trying to change the subject and attack Mr. Trump. And in a change election, where you have upwards of 3/4 of voters wanting to go in a different direction, that's a dangerous spot for the Clinton campaign to be at, because they're not offering voters anything to actually vote for.
We'll be talking to the Clinton campaign about that and what their strategy is as well. Jason, it's great to have you in the program. We appreciate it. I know you're busy.
Thank you. Appreciate
a week up until voting day. Thank you very much. Coming up in our second hour happening now, we're going to talk to a representative from Hillary Clinton's campaign about the FBI review of more emails, but also her strategy as well in the final few days until voting. John?
So FBI Director James Comey under fire from both sides of the aisle as the Clinton email controversy heats up once again. This amid new calls for Comey's a Fox News alert and some changes to the electoral map in our Fox News electoral scorecard. Generally, they would seem to benefit the Trump campaign. Alaska, with its 3 electoral votes, has always been a solid Republican. It is now considered a lean Republican state. But look at Florida and Nevada. Florida's 29 electoral votes. They used to be classified under our map as leaning Democrat. Florida is now a toss-up state. So is Nevada. And those 6 electoral votes in Nevada could be critical in this election. Some positive news for the Clinton campaign comes out of North Carolina. Its 15 electoral votes, which had been classified under our system as toss-up, are now considered to lean Democrat. Big changes on the 2016 scorecard. 1 week to go. We'll keep you updated.
Well, back to the big news of the day. FBI Director James Comey under attack by Democrats and even some Republicans, quite frankly, over his decision to inform Congress that the Bureau would examine some new emails found on a laptop 11 days before the election, and here we are now a week out. They argued, his critics, that Comey's move has the potential to impact the outcome of the election because he failed to provide any additional details. Oklahoma Senator James Lankford is a member of the Senate Homeland Security Committee and the he's calling for Hillary Clinton's security clearance to be revoked. Senator, it's nice to have you on the program. Do you have any response to that request as of yet?
I have not had any response to that request yet, but it should be a basic request for Cheryl Mills, for Huma Abedin, especially her staff around her. That's standard practice. If there's an investigation that's ongoing, they set aside the security clearance of those individuals. I'm just asking for people to be treated the same as they would for every other American.
What is your greatest concern?
Well, my greatest concern is just the flippant way that this information's been handled. The FBI is in a completely untenable situation that they're having to manage what's happening in an election, but Director Comey did not cause this. This was caused by a secure server that should have been secure, was actually put in Hillary Clinton's home and was managed in a way that clearly made it open to our enemies. I mean, even the WikiLeaks, things that the Democrats are currently fighting nationwide right now, and all the leaks coming out of the Clinton administration show people from outside of the country can reach into these individual servers. And for her to be able to put that server in that spot put Director Comey in a very bad place. All that to say, it was clear that Hillary Clinton put her political security above national security, and I'm just trying to confront the basic facts. If documents are not handled correctly among staff or among Hillary Clinton herself, we need to make sure the classified documents are handled correctly.
And we know that you also attend classified briefings. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Some of the members on your committee, Democrats like Senator Dianne Feinstein, in her words, she says she's appalled by James Comey's actions. Bret Stephens, a conservative that writes for the Wall Street Journal, who now says he's actually voting for Hillary Clinton, wants James Comey to resign. We're hearing that from conservatives, from Republicans. What's your response to those Republicans?
Again, James Comey is put in a horrible situation. He didn't create the situation. Hillary Clinton created the situation by creating this private server and to be able to put everyone in this untenable spot. The previous investigation that they had said was closed was all based around speed. Now you've got additional evidence that I'm curious about, trying to figure out why we have additional evidence that seems to be Huma Abedin's personal computer that was relating business documents, and that was back and forth with the Clinton server as well. My question is, why wasn't that already a part of the evidence? It seems that the fence that the FBI put, or the Department of Justice put around the FBI to say you can only investigate these things, was so narrow that they weren't getting all the evidence. It is a basic thing that if Huma Abedin is interacting on this private server, her computer, even her shared computer with her husband, should have been a part of this investigation. And why it wasn't a part of the investigation in the first place either begs the question of why the Department of Justice put the boundaries so clear, or why the FBI was in such a hurry they didn't take this in. But this clearly should have been a part of the investigation from the beginning, and makes me ask what else has been missed.
And what actions could you take with those additional questions that you don't have answers for? As a senator, what's your next step?
Yeah, my next step is just to make sure they actually do a thorough investigation. They spent almost 4 years investigating General James Cartwright for violations he had over classified information, and he was just confirming to a journalist what was already known by the journalist. He's now facing felony prosecution for having a conversation with someone about information that was classified. That was a 4-year investigation to get it all out. The FBI clearly did a very fast, very rapid look at the case, then close it as fast as possible, not a thorough case as they did with General Cartwright. And so my main question is, if we're going to do this, we should treat every person exactly the same in America, regardless of who your last name is.
There's a big question about how to enforce that. Quickly, only about 30 seconds. Senator, a broad question. Are we all weaker because of this? You have the Department of Justice, FBI under fire. They're there to protect all of us. I just wonder what that means for everyone, our country.
It's a loss of trust is what it means. It's not only a loss of trust among Americans for institutions like the FBI that have been nonpartisan, that have a lot of great career professionals that are there. This gives the appearance of being partisan in the process. So that makes us weaker, but it also makes us weaker around the world. Hillary Clinton and her team left documents in a hotel room in Russia that was classified, left documents unsecured in a hotel room in China that was classified, left documents in a car in India. All those things are critical mistakes to deal with classified information. It only weakens trust here. It weakens our ability to be able to handle classified information to the individuals and the entities around the world that mean to do us harm.
And of course, the Clinton team and some investigations have pushed back on the leaving of classified information at some of these sites. We don't have time to get into that now, Senator Langford, but your broader point is taken, and we look forward to having you back on the program. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now to some brand new developments in America's election headquarters, and they concern Donald Trump and his taxes, with the New York Times obtaining documents that it says show that in the early 1990s, as he scrambled to stave off financial ruin, Mr. Trump avoided reporting hundreds of millions of dollars in taxable income by using a tax avoidance maneuver so legally dubious, his own lawyers advised him that the Internal Revenue Service would most likely declare it improper if he were audited. Thanks to this one maneuver, which was later outlawed by Congress, Mr. Trump potentially escaped paying tens of millions of dollars in federal personal income taxes. Joining us now, Kristen Soltis-Anderson, columnist at the Washington Examiner and a Republican pollster. Jessica Tarlov is a Democratic pollster and senior political strategist at Schoen Consulting. I have read through the Times article, Kristen. It's pretty dense. It gets into some pretty vague areas of U.S. tax law, but the implication is that Donald Trump evaded taxes. How much of an effect is this likely to have on the campaign?
I think the most likely effect it would be to, it's giving another news cycle to the Clinton campaign. Things have been going badly for them with the news last week about the FBI investigation, the additional emails. So things have been trending Donald Trump's way. So certainly you'd rather not have another bad news cycle. But I don't think this is going to change minds of many voters. I think voters are mostly in their own camps. And the question now is, does this change enthusiasm? Donald Trump has seen his supporters be much more enthusiastic than Clinton's supporters in polls that have come out in the last few days, which means if you're somebody who's a voter who knows you're going to vote for Donald Trump and you're trying to decide, do I vote today or do I wait for election day? If it's a bad news headline day, if you've got a story like this coming out, do you just decide, well, maybe I won't do it today, I'll get to it later? That's why both of these candidates are so adamant that they want their supporters to early vote so that they can bank those votes rather than have them be subject to any more swings in the news cycle.
And Jessica, it goes back more than a quarter century. It goes back to before Bill Clinton was president when, there were articles being written about Hillary Clinton and her cattle futures.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with what Kristen was saying. I actually think that this New York Times story was very dense indeed, but it had that good zinger at the end that Hillary Clinton voted to close this loophole. I don't think that it's going to matter at this point. I think that people think Donald Trump cheated on his taxes. I think that that's largely baked in, and I think to at least some degree Hillary Clinton was correct when she said that with the new FBI news that's already baked in here. I mean, 30% of Americans, that's it, think that she's honest and trustworthy. You can't really go much further below that because we know there are Democrats being polled in there who think quite highly of our candidate. So it's a difficult position to be in. The polls are obviously tightening. It's a get-out-the-vote game. We still have 5 times the number of staffers as Republicans on the ground. And as you talked about earlier in the show, there is some good news in terms of what's going on in North Carolina and in Nevada. But then you have Florida, and I don't think we're going to get Texas. I was pumped about that. But it doesn't look likely at this point. And Alaska, I mean, cool, but I would have preferred Texas. So it's going to be close, and please vote. And vote Democrat.
Kristen, Donald Trump has tried to spin some of this to his advantage by saying, look, the tax code is enormously complicated, and I am the candidate who has dealt with it, has explored it, plumbed its very depths, and I can help Americans with this monstrosity known as the tax code run by the IRS, administered by the IRS.
That's right. So Donald Trump has uniquely taken things that would have been an unbelievable liability to almost any other candidate. Take, for instance, when Mitt Romney, it came out that I believe his effective tax rate was something like 14 or 17%, and that was considered a really bad news story for him. Now, Mitt Romney didn't break any laws, everything was legal, but that was considered not a great story. For Donald Trump, he would take that story, and even though he's skirting even much closer to the line of what's legal or not legal, makes it a positive by saying, well, you know what, this is proof that I understand that the system is broken. It's proof that I know it better than anyone else, and it's proof that I'm the one that can fix it. So that's been something odd that Donald Trump has somehow been able to do this cycle, is take things that would be negative for anyone else and spin them into positives. But I think at this point, if you already are inclined to like Donald Trump, to view these stories that would be seen as bad, but you can turn them into something good, you're already voting for him. And frankly, you may have already early voted for him if you're that enthusiastic. I think it's for any of these folks, if you're a Republican, you're less than crazy about Trump, this is just, it's a bad headline day, and it may make you less likely to go stand in line after work and cast that ballot. And both campaigns want these votes banked.
All right. Kristen Soltis-Anderson, Jessica Tarlov, stand by for just a bit. We're going to take you now to a Mike Pence rally.
Great to be with
He is trying to rally the faithful, and we understand he's going to get into some meat of Donald Trump's proposals for eliminating Obamacare. Let's listen
in America like no other. Dr. Ben Carson. Thank you, Ben. It's great to be here with all of you and with so many distinguished former colleagues from my years in Congress. And thank you all for coming today. It's wonderful to be back in Pennsylvania, just a short way outside of Valley Forge. A turning point in the Revolutionary War, where Americans first showed the resilience and determination to launch this experiment in freedom that has been the marvel of the world. I must say, I appreciate Dr. Carson's introduction, but he knows me well enough to know the introduction I prefer is a little bit shorter. I'm a Christian, a conservative, and a Republican in that order. And it's humbling for me to think that it was a little more than 3 months ago, with my wife Karen at my side, that I accepted my party's nomination to run and serve as the next Vice President of the United States of America. And I have to tell you, I joined this campaign in a heartbeat, because you have nominated a man for president who never quits, who never backs down. He is a fighter. He is a winner. And until not too long ago, it seemed like he was out there fighting all on his own. But now this movement is coming together. Pennsylvania is coming together. And we're going to make Donald Trump the next president of the United States of America. Donald Trump has a plan. The man who wrote The Art of the Deal has got a deal for the American people. We call it the contract with the American voter. Working with Congress, we're going to get this economy growing again. We're going to create 25 million new jobs in the next 10 years with time-honored conservative principles. We're going to lower taxes across the board, reform our tax system. We're going to have trade deals that work for the American worker, and we're going to roll back the avalanche of red tape coming out of Washington, D.C. We're going to end the war on American energy once and for all. We're going to invest in America's future, and we're going to bring real choice to education so every child in America has a chance at a world-class education. We're going to secure our borders, end illegal immigration once and for all. We're going to rebuild our military, take care of our veterans, and bring law and order back to every community in the land. But most importantly for today, we're going to repeal and replace Obamacare. You know, I'm very humbled. I'm very humbled that Donald Trump asked me to serve in this role, and I'm very humbled that he gave me the privilege of addressing this issue with you today and to playing a role in our future administration in bringing about that goal that you just so warmly received. Now, some of you may know that before becoming governor of the state of Indiana, I spent 12 years in the Congress of the United States. I often tell people that if I only had 12 years left to live, I'd want to live it as a member of Congress, because that was the longest 12 years of my life. I mean, it can be a frustrating place, especially back in 2009 and 2010. I was actually the leader of the House Republican Conference, helping to lead the fight with my fellow Republicans against the so-called Affordable Care Act. Now, I said then, we all said then, what's proven to be true, that when you when you order every American to have government-approved health insurance, whether they want it or need it, when you create a government-run plan paid for with job-killing tax increases, that is plain and simple a government takeover of health care. Republicans knew it for what it was. We called it out. And that's the reason why I'm proud to say not one single Republican in the House or Senate voted for Obamacare. Every single one opposed it. And I'm also proud. I'm also proud that since 2010, Republicans in Congress have been united and continued to work each and every day to replace Obamacare with free market health care solutions that will work for the American people. You know, good things happen. Good things happen when Americans stand together and when members of my party stand together on Capitol Hill. So I want to say to every American, as you head to the voting booth in just 1 week, know this. We have an opportunity to bring real change to Washington, D.C. The momentum is on our side. The latest polls have Donald Trump leading nationwide in the race for President of the United States. Democrats and independents are joining this movement. Republicans across the country are coming home. Across the spectrum, Americans know that Obamacare has got to be repealed and replaced, and that only by electing Donald Trump as the next president of the United States and re-electing strong Republican majorities in the Congress will we get it done. And we will get it done. I stand before you today because today open enrollment begins on the Obamacare exchanges. Once again, millions of Americans are going to be disappointed by their lack of options. And frankly, they're going to be shocked by the high premiums and the cost of health insurance. This government takeover of health care that we call Obamacare is failing in states across America, as it is here in Pennsylvania. And the case has never been stronger for repeal. It's important to remember, as we talk about it as Obamacare, that Hillary Clinton actually said a little bit earlier this year, and I'm quoting, quote, "Before it was called Obamacare, it was called Hillary Care." You remember the promises that President Obama and Hillary Clinton made just a few years back? Remember they said that the cost of your health premiums would go down. Not true. Remember they said if you like your doctor, you can keep? Not true. They said if you like your health insurance plan, you can keep it. Not true. The truth is premiums for employer plans have gone up by almost $5,000 since President Obama took office. And last week, the Obama administration announced, and this is almost breathtaking to think about it, the Obama administration itself announced that the average premiums under Obamacare exchanges are going to go up 25% on average across this country. But that average hides the specific states where families are about to be pummeled with unprecedented sticker shock. For a 27-year-old buying an Obamacare plan, Arizona's premiums are going up by 116%. Tennessee is going to go up 63%. Minnesota, 59%. Alabama, 58%. And in North Carolina, they're going to go up by 40%. American wages haven't gone up in the last 15 years by any appreciable amount, and yet we're going to see the cost of our own health insurance, the health care of our families, rise dramatically in the next year. Right here in Pennsylvania, that number is a whopping 53% increase for next year, and a total increase of 69% when you add in last year's rate hike. Our paychecks haven't gone up by that amount, but the cost of your health care here in Pennsylvania is. And most heartbreaking of all, in Pennsylvania, almost 110,000 households will see their rates spike drastically with absolutely no help from the government. I remember back in the days in Congress, the very day this bill passed. You remember, Doc? Nancy Pelosi went to the floor of the Congress and said, quote, We have to pass the bill so we can find out what's in it. Well, we found out, and it's even worse than we thought. I mean, what good is a health care plan if you can't afford to use it? With its increasing costs and high deductibles, most people are paying for something they can't afford to use. 50% of Obamacare customers are now skipping medical visits to cut costs. Think about that. Americans are putting their personal health second because Obamacare's skyrocketing costs are too high and too burdensome. Obamacare truly is also it's a crushing weight on the American people, but it's also a crushing weight on the American economy. I mean, even former President Bill Clinton said, costs are going up, coverage is going down, it's the craziest thing in the world. I guess even with the Clintons, sometimes truth happens. You know what? Don't be deceived by Bill Clinton's newfound skepticism. I mean, Hillary Clinton's plan is actually to introduce what's called single payer into the system, more government-run health insurance. She actually went to Canada and gave a speech that came out not too long ago. She told Canadians and business groups that she wanted to get, and I'm quoting, universal health care coverage like you have here in Canada. Well, we don't want the socialized health care they have in Canada. We want American solutions. I got to tell you, though, my favorite quote came from President Obama just about a week ago. Down in Florida, he was celebrating the 3rd anniversary of the rollout of Obamacare. And in his, did you hear about this? In his speech, he actually compared Obamacare to the Samsung Galaxy 7 phones that spontaneously burst into flames. I'm serious. President Obama said, here's the quote, when one of these companies comes out with a new smartphone that has a few bugs, what do? They fix it. They upgrade it. Unless it catches fire, then they pull it off the market. Well, what a coincidence, Mr. President, because that's exactly what we're going to do with Obamacare. We're going to pull it off the market so it stops burning up our wallets. You know, it's remarkable when you think about it. Almost 20% of Americans eligible for Obamacare will have only one exchange insurer available this year. One plan is not a choice, it's a monopoly. At least 1.4 million Americans are about to lose their plan in 2017. And that's after millions already lost their plans in the first years of Obamacare. This means that too many people won't be able to continue to see their doctor. It's going to interrupt treatment and care. You know, part of the reason costs went up is because Obamacare dictates that Americans buy a government-designed health insurance plan. We knew that when they passed this bill, laden with expensive and oftentimes very unnecessary benefits. I mean, no wonder that the young and the healthy don't want to buy these plans. I mean, the coverage is expensive. The plans have huge deductibles that people can't afford. I mean, the average deductible for the so-called cheapest category of family plans this year is almost $12,000. That's more than 1/5 of the median household income in the United States. What's worse is that many of our best doctors have opted out of seeing patients with exchange coverage. It's true. But it's also true that Obamacare is killing jobs, and it's destroying small business growth all across the United States of America. It's not only impacting individuals, it's impacting our economy. Obamacare's employer mandates and new taxes have been destructive to the economy, killing jobs and reducing wages and growth. Obamacare actually, in and of itself, imposed more than $1 trillion in new taxes on healthcare providers, taxpayers, and businesses to pay for all these failed policies. It's reduced pay for workers and small businesses and reduced employment by more than 350,000 jobs nationwide. It is an extraordinary record of economic failure. Obamacare's employer mandate raised the minimum cost of hiring a full-time worker to $10.30 an hour for larger employers without increasing take-home pay for anybody. State and local officials have conceded that Obamacare forced municipal governments to cut hours for part-time employees. You know, it's time to end this government takeover of health care and start over with American solutions. For all these reasons and more, when Donald Trump becomes president of the United States of America and we re-elect strong Republican majorities in Congress, we're going to repeal Obamacare, lock, stock, and barrel. How free market meet our health care needs and how we meet a boundless American future. The Trump health care plan will make health care more affordable, put people back in the driver's seat of their health care, not the government. We'll get rid of the individual mandate because government shouldn't tell you how to spend your money and put priorities in your life. Donald Trump will allow people to purchase health insurance across state lines, just like you can your car insurance and your life insurance. We're going to create a transition period for those receiving subsidies to ensure that Americans don't face disruption or hardship in their coverage while we pull this albatross off the back of the American economy. And we're going to make it easier, working with newly reelected majorities in Congress, for Americans to open health savings accounts they can use to pay first dollar expenses for their health. You know, I'm kind of proud to say the idea of a tax-free account to pay for medical expenses was actually pioneered back in Indiana. Health savings accounts, if you're not familiar with them, basically allow you to control your health care dollars. Pick your doctors and your treatments that work the best for you without interference from insurance or government bureaucrats. Instead of giving subsidies to big insurance companies, the way Obamacare does, Donald Trump will push health savings accounts that will provide assistance directly to the American people through their health savings accounts. You know, the truth of the matter is there's an old saying that, you know, when everybody in your house is healthy, you can have a lot of problems. But when one person is sick, you only got one problem. Well, we can relate to that. Health savings accounts will empower families to meet their health care needs. And they can pick the insurance plan that works best for them and their family and gives them the peace of mind that if someone in their household is sick or has a major medical problem, they'll have coverage and they'll have the treatment that they need and deserve. And when it comes to Medicaid, you know, Medicaid started back in 1965 as a health insurance program for the poor. 50 years later, frankly, Medicaid is not only broke, it's broken. And Obamacare has put the majority of new people receiving coverage into a broken Medicaid system. You know, back in the Hoosier State, we actually said no thanks to expanding traditional Medicaid. And we fought for almost 2 years to make coverage more widely available the right way with consumer-driven health care and health savings accounts. And it's working. We call it the Healthy Indiana Plan. I promise you, when Donald Trump becomes president of the United States, we're going to work with newly reelected majorities in Congress, and we're going to block grant Medicaid to the states and allow states in America to innovate with consumer-driven, market-driven proposals to meet the health care needs of our most vulnerable people. It's an idea Congress has talked about for years, block granting Medicaid back to the states, allow our states to be those laboratories of innovation that they've always been throughout our history. States know what's best for their people, and Donald Trump will give new freedom and new flexibility to the people of Pennsylvania to innovate and reform and design programs that will meet the needs of the people of this state and every state. And health care costs will also come down when people have more control and also know more about what their health care costs are. And when Donald Trump becomes president of the United States, we're going to empower Americans with not only greater control over their health care choices, but we'll also empower them with more information about the cost and quality of care in their hometown. Today, frankly, people have very little transparency into the cost and quality of their care. It's frankly easier to compare prices when you're buying a car or buying a television than when you're trying to decide which hospital or doctor to use. Donald Trump's going to fix that. When Donald Trump becomes president of the United States, we're going to advance reforms that will allow Americans to see the cost of their care and have the power to make their own choices in health care providers, in physicians, in treatment, and in costs. There'll be more options and more information. And you know, just the way the free market works, healthcare providers are going to be more responsive when they're answering to patients' needs in a competitive marketplace. They're going to be a whole lot more responsive than they are to insurance companies and big government bureaucrats. And make no mistake about it, as we go through this transition, Donald Trump and I will protect Americans with pre-existing conditions so that they're not charged more or denied coverage just because they've been sick. As long as they paid their premiums consistently, they'll have the coverage they need and deserve. And we'll reverse Obamacare's federal takeover of the insurance market altogether. You know, we didn't see the type of rate increases across the nation when the states were running things. So, my friends, the truth of the matter is we're going to empower states once again to manage our health insurance industry and not Washington, D.C. You know, men and women in Pennsylvania, I can tell you the choice in this election couldn't be more clear. With Hillary Clinton, we'll get more of the same from the last 7.5 years. More taxes, more spending, more regulation, and more Obamacare. I mean, we can't trust Hillary Clinton with our health care any more than we can trust her with classified information. Obamacare, the debacle previously known as Hillary Care, was a government takeover of health care from the start, plain and simple. Some of us knew that. Now every American knows that. It upended the miracle of the marketplace. Competition was crushed and replaced with the heavy hand of government control. Obamacare is a catastrophic failure. Hillary Clinton says she wants to double down on that failure. But we still got time to turn this thing around. 7 days to be exact. Americans can choose a healthcare economy built on freedom, consumer choice, and free market principles. It's just going to take all of us to do it. You know, as I close, let me say it's been deeply humbling for me and for my family to find ourselves in this role. Campaigning with Donald Trump is an incredible experience. I mean, we pull into these rallies, tens of thousands of Americans who know we can make America great again, lining the streets and standing in long lines. But he always says the same thing to me when we're whisking by in that motorcade. He'll nudge me when he looks at the crowd, and he'll say, Mike, you know, this is not about me. This is not about us. It's not even about our party. He says, this is a movement of the American people, and the American people are going to make America great again. We can make America great again. We can make health care in America great again, but it's going to take all of us to do it. It's been inspiring to see that movement. Independents across America who have been drawn to Donald Trump's call to break the gridlock in Washington, D.C. It's inspiring to see Democrats joining this movement who are tired of liberal policies flowing out of our nation's capital and trade deals that ship jobs overseas. But I would say specifically to some of my fellow Republicans out there who believe we can have a healthcare system built on free market economy and consumer choice, We need to say with one voice, it's time to come home. It's time to come home and elect Donald Trump as the next president of the United States. It's time to come home and re-elect Republican majorities in the United States House of Representatives and the Senate. And it's time to come home to bring their 30-year obsession with government-run health care to an end by ensuring that Hillary Clinton is never elected president of the United States of America. So, ladies and gentlemen, with 1 week to go before a great victory for the American people, I give you the man with the vision, the agenda, the leadership necessary to restore freedom to our healthcare economy and make America great again. Join me in welcoming the next president of the United States of America.